Welcome to the Dynasty Dummies podcast. I am Zach Reed. I'm joined again by JMic and Matt Foreman, and we are rolling the third episode of Running Backs. The third six, we're going all the way up to 18 this week in the Dynasty Dummies 2023 rookie Hootenanny. And it's a little more exciting show than I anticipated. There are some legitimate players in this bottom 18 with the air grammar, as Peter Howard is wont to say. So, fellas, I'm excited to get into this. How are you feeling about this week?
I'm going to concur with you that there was a couple players in here that I'm really interested in that I don't see people are talking about enough, and a couple players who I see people talking about that I think they're talking about too much. But other than that, like we were talking about pre-show, I'm on vacation mode here. I'm not working again until the 17th. I'm going to be sipping on some somethings in the Florida Panhandle next week. Hopefully they're talking about some tropical weather coming in. Let's just hope that pushes away. So we'll see what happens. It's Masters weekend. It's Easter weekend. It's a great time to just sit and watch TV.
And in the midst of being in vacation mode, these running backs, I feel like, are anything but. Listen, they may not have graded the absolute highest in some instances, but they're still intriguing players. That again, curious to see how the NFL views them and the things that they can do well. We've got a pretty good, I won't call it bottom of the barrel, but again, this is as anticipated, I think, of a catch-all show that we've been able to have in the years that I've been a part of this process. So I'm excited about it. So before we get into it, Zach, help lay the foundation and talk to us about what we need to kick off with today.
Before you get into that real quick, Zach, some might say that watching these guys was a pleasure.
Married to the game.
Do you feel? Yeah, so JMic, I should be jumping off talking about running backs, how you should approach running backs in your rookie drafts, how after the mid-second you should be looking at stacking these running backs because there's so many in this class. I have got a little bit more weighing on my mind right now, and I'm going to get a little heavy. We'll bring it back to the rookies, but this is a game. Fantasy football. There are times we get so wrapped up in playing it that it seems all-consuming. It seems even important. We take losses hard. We celebrate victories like they're our children. Sometimes on the far reaches of Twitter, this is not anybody who watches us or listens to us, but sometimes people will go fire shots across the bow of players who cost them wins and cost them championships. And we forget about the people. And yet the players, they're people. We'll do that another show. That's important. But I'm talking about the people in your leagues, the most important part of your leagues, the people, and also the people in your life. It's been a really long, difficult few years, and a lot of people have struggled with a lot of things and are still struggling with a lot of things. And we're not great at, I am not great at opening up, discussing things that are weighing on me, and helping other people discuss things that are weighing on them. We've kind of been a society of suck it up and deal with it. Keep things in. Don't let other people have to share your pain. And when it comes to mental health, that is a disservice to everybody. It hurts you. It hurts the people around you. That strong silent type, that doesn't work. Talk. Reach out to that friend that you've been meaning to reach out to. Be vulnerable. Listen. It's not a weakness. It takes way more courage to do that, to open up, and it's infinitely better for you and everybody around you. We live in this world right now that has such a veneer of social media perfection. Everybody posts those pictures and everybody looks happy in all the pictures. And you got to stop. You got to realize that that's not what is actually happening with everybody's life. That's what they want you to see. Still reach out. And if you do that, stop pretending everything is perfect because it's not. Reach out, reconnect, and just kind of help the people around you. I think we'll all be better off. This is a game, but the people are the important part.
Incredibly well said, Zach. I feel like there are so many sayings that people tend to lean into, but I will say this: support is not a solo sport, as we've mentioned before, and it is of utmost importance to keep the main thing. And I don't mean to throw out these tropes as though they're just something to just quickly toss out without, with only half thinking, but I say those just with absolute sincerity and understanding that we're built for community. We're built for togetherness. And it is all the more important in the times that we live in now to be able to lean in instead of leaning out. So very well said, Zach. As we transition into the part 2 of the catch-all episode, part 2 of 3, and who knows what other spontaneous craziness we can come up with. But we've got the running backs on tap this week. And as Zach mentioned previously, we've got 12 already recorded, graded, that we've shared on previous episodes. You can catch those, obviously, that we've done before. This week, 6 fresh names, 6 fresh faces, 6 people who have the opportunity to perhaps surprise and delight or show us the reason that they are in this bottom portion of the bracket for our running backs. Let's get into it, gentlemen. Tonight, we start the evening with the most decorated of all of these guys and the diminutive one, the Mighty Mouse, if you will, Deuce Vaughn, hailing from the Little Apple, Kansas State, Manhattan, Kansas, stand up, 5'5", 179 pounds. And in 21 and 2022, man was a consensus All-American, rushing for almost 3,000 yards in the last 2 years. You talk about bell cows, 235 attempts in 2021, 293 attempts in 2022. The man scored 27 touchdowns in the last 2 years. He had a really good freshman season back in 2020. Look, Deuce Vaughn is someone who, when you look at profiles in terms of pure production, as nice as you'll see in this class. Zach, we'll start with you. Can young 5'5" Deuce Vaughn be someone that we can be excited about regarding his game?
It's comp season, JMic. It is comp season, and there's rarely any creativity when it comes to the fantasy community tying players together. A running back with dreads? Jamal Charles. A tight end with even a modicum of potential? He's Baby Gronk. Perhaps the most egregiously unfair comp this year, though, falls on Deuce Vaughn, the 5'5" superstar tailback from Kansas State, which just happens to be the former home of diminutive dynamo Darren Sproles. Deuce Vaughn is a very slippery runner who is at his best when he can get outside of the tackles. Although he's undersized, Vaughn runs compact and will barrel through arm tackles. He accelerates to and through the line of scrimmage very quickly and also has excellent long speed in the open field. One of the most deadly facets of Vaughn's game, though, is his ability to cut off a planted foot while running at full speed. I mean, he just makes that yak and keeps on going. This quick cut, combined with Vaughn's patience to let a play develop, makes him a very dangerous runner. Vaughn also does well in the receiving game, as well as getting some work as a kick returner as a freshman, which probably will be his initial avenues onto the field at the next level.
And that short area quickness was paying off in dividends left and right for Deuce Vaughn. Foreman, we're going to bring it over to you now, continuing the things that you like in reference to Deuce Vaughn's game.
Yeah, Zach nailed a lot of the major points that I have with him. He's a natural receiver, is patient. Zach mentioned already slippery. He moves all over the formation. I have written down here, he's the definition of a jitterbug. He's got great agility. He can use it to make initial defenders whiff. He could run through the arm tackles while in the open field as well too. He's got good leg drive. He's excellent in space, and I just wrote he's really fun. Like, he's just someone who's just fun to watch. Again, the Sproles comps are inevitable because it's helmet scouting and measure stick scouting. I know we ran into this a few years ago with Darwin Williams as well. It was Darwin Williams, Darwin Thompson. Thompson. Okay.
Yeah.
Darwin Thompson. I think that Deuce is a little bit better than Darwin. A little bit better there. But we're gonna get the Sproles comps just because he's short when Kansas State. That's just gonna happen. So I do feel that, like Zach mentioned as well too, I do feel that Vaughn's immediate role is going to be in the special teams work, whether it be punt or kick return. But he's gonna be super fun there. And if your league has those kind of things, definitely someone to take a look at in that avenue, because if you get him an open field, he is fun.
Shout out to the Trade Addicts leagues. Russ always talking about those punt return yards. Getting over now, and let's talk through a little bit of the things that we're looking at. Deuce Vaughn's game that may not measure up. And again, I don't say that in jest. 5'5", 179 pounds. It's really difficult to get on board with the size. So is there anything specifically, Foreman, that you're finding about Deuce Vaughn's game that you're just like, you know what, this ain't it right here?
Yeah, my biggest concern with Vaughn is pass blocking. He's just not good. If his size shows up there, I mean, 5'5", 176 pounds, you're not going to be able to block Big Ten defensive linemen and linebackers and blitzing safeties, let alone full-grown ass men in the NFL. So I think for someone who's probably going to have to make his hay on third down, not being able to pass block is something he's definitely going to have to work on initially. Again, he runs with some power, but obviously he's 176 pounds. Like, how much power is a 175-pound man going to run with? Also, his patience he does it to a fault as well too. Sometimes I just want him to get going, and he's just kind of trying to figure out what he wants to do, and he's getting tackled behind the line of scrimmage, just trying to decide what he wants to do next. Struggles that I mentioned the arm tackles in open field. He doesn't run through those at the line of scrimmage. A lot of times he'll get wrapped up there, especially those big body eaters in the middle there. He's just going to get sucked up there. Again, he's a guy who's going to need some space, but man, when he gets that space, he's really fun. So I would really love to see him in some sort of creative offense. Obviously, we want to see a lot of these guys. We want to see every player in a creative offense. But I think Deuce could really shine in a very specific role in one of those fun offenses, whether it be you know what I mean? The Rams could use a third down running back. I think he'd be a great compliment to Akers, and I think McVay could do some really fun things there as well too. So selfishly, I wouldn't mind Vaughn there as a day 3 pick. But plus, it made me feel good about my Cam Akers shares there as well too, because he ain't touching first and second down. So, but yeah, I think Vaughn is an interesting player. Someone I'm a little tepid with about what their overall ceiling is as an NFL player. But again, as Zach mentioned in the chat, you root for this guy because he's fun to watch. And at the end of the day, we want to watch fun players.
I'm surprised to hear that you're ready to kick Kyron Williams to the curb that fast, Foreman, for your LA Rams here.
You know what? I bought a bunch of Kyron last year. Middle of the season, I think I paid a third in a league for Kyron Williams, and that got me nowhere.
Hopefully he'll be able to come back from that foot injury. Now, as we continue to talk through Deuce Vaughn, I'll just add this real quick. I think I saw the power piece a little differently than you all, and maybe I didn't. And I'm curious how, Zach, you're going to continue to talk through some of the things that you did not enjoy. When it came to Deuce Vaughn, I definitely am with you, Foreman, in reference to him being just absolutely vacuumed into defenders, specifically at the line of scrimmage. He's not for whatever reason, for as small and explosive as he can be, specifically in the open field, and after he's got that runway, there's a serious lack of punch, both laterally and going north-south for him in terms of being able to make that first guy miss, really beat somebody in that short area. So even all that quickness that he has, and I believe it might be size induced, but the ineffectiveness of him on those downs really just feel like puts a heavy cap on what we could even hope for him to be, unless they get him in the NFL weight room and he's just able to really work that out. But again, we've talked before about the league not necessarily being a place for development. So Zach, continue the conversation here. Drawbacks in reference to Deuce Vaughn.
Yeah, the list of Vaughn's shortcomings isn't particularly long, but there are some pretty big ones. Although he did well in the receiving game, 91 receptions over the past 2 seasons, Vaughn is actually not a great route runner. He will stop mid-route while the play continues on, making things easier on a defender and far more difficult on his quarterback. Vaughn is a terrible blocker, and Matt, you mentioned that, but both in terms of technique and ability. Because of his lack of size, he often simply throws himself at the legs of oncoming defenders, and they can just step over him. And even though he rushed for over 4,500 yards at K-State, Vaughn has struggles running inside. And JMic, I think this is what you're talking about. Like when he gets outside and gets ahead of steam, he'll run through arm tackles. But when he's running inside between the tackles, he often finds himself without enough physicality to get himself out of trouble. It's easy to cheer for Deuce Vaughn. It's easy to run out the Darren Sproles comps and lock Vaughn in for 8 straight seasons of 40-plus receptions. It's easy to forget about Javian Hawkins and Donnell Pumphrey. But the range of fantasy outcomes for Vaughn seems to be a pinnacle of a fairly useful flex play due to his pass catching with just an oubliette floor. And if you don't know that one, go look it up or watch The Labyrinth. Hoggle will give you the deets, but he feels a little bit like his ceiling is we're hoping Naheem Hines.
Listen, if I'm going to be looking that up, Zach, I'm going to need to first of all tap into the whole Wheel of Fortune and buy a vowel. Am I starting with an O? Am I starting with a U? Help me out here.
Yeah, is that French? Is that French, Zach? Because I just looked it up.
It is French. It's a place of forgetting.
Oui. Very, very well then. Leaving Manhattan, Kansas. Now we're going to head north a little bit to Illinois, and we're going to talk through a little bit of Evan Hull, running back out of Northwestern, 5'10", 209 pounds, and I feel like really busted on the scene when it came to the actual NFL Combine. He was a player that I think people had a decent idea of, but with his showing at the Combine, really opened eyes for people to take a closer look at who he is and who he has performed as a player. 4 years at Northwestern. We've got 2019 through 2022, and really that junior and senior year at Northwestern are the years that we're looking at that were his finest seasons. Came onto the scene in 2021, 1,009 yards on 196 attempts, 7 touchdowns, gave us 33 catches in that season. Comes back this final season in Northwestern at 2022, 221 carries, 913 yards, 5 touchdowns, and 55 catches for 546 yards, averaging 9.9 per touch in the receiving game with 2 touchdowns as well. Listen, Evan Hull, you fully have my attention with all of the Zach Reed rule love that you have, as well as your performance on the field. Foreman, let's talk Evan Hull.
Yeah, I think one game this past year, he caught like 13 passes. Like I was like, did they get that wrong? And watch the game, like, no, I think he caught 13 passes. So, yeah, interesting guy. First thing I have written down, solid pass catcher. What a surprise. A guy catches a lot of balls. He's a good pass catcher. Who'd thunk it? He transitions to a runner quickly as a pass catcher. He is a power back. He is, I mean, let's see. Comes in at, let's see here, 5'10", 210. So not as big as I thought he was going to be, but he's a little, he's a power back, but he's a little small power back. He runs like a bull in a china shop. When he's running between the tackles, it's what he runs like. It just sometimes it's a good thing and sometimes it's not. He can shed arm tackles with his strength, and he can wear down defenses with his physical running style.
Yeah, and with that, with his running style, and I think the game that you're referring to, Foreman, is that one against Duke, where he basically just puts on a clinic as he is everything for that Northwestern offense. I really do enjoy his quick feet before he actually gets his momentum going. I also really enjoy the fact that when we're looking at in the short and the screen game, so incredibly close to the line of scrimmage, he's exhibiting very clean hands. He's able to set up defenders in mid route, and it's not necessarily some devastating moves, but he has enough to be able to free himself and find that little bit of space that the quarterback will need to find him in the flats and to find him one-on-one against the linebacker, which I very much did not expect from a lot of what I was seeing in his game, but it was a pleasant surprise to be able to see him do that time in and time out. And I think that he really, as much as he does exhibit power, I think that the majority of his wins come when he has room to run, which obviously I feel like you can say that about a lot of running backs. And so I don't want to do the whole John Madden, the team who's got the most points wins the game. I don't want to give you that. But he's at his absolute best when he's able to get that momentum going and really be able to be a problem downfield for the second level of defenders. Zach, over to you. Let's continue to talk Evan Hull's goodness.
When we talk about running backs and specifically running back archetypes, there's one I think that for us is particularly exciting, and that's that pass catcher plus. And as smart as the fantasy community has become over the last half dozen years, pass catching is still undervalued at the running back position. And the most underrated of all backs are the ones who profile, at least initially, as being able to capture a third down role with the added bonus of having the size and ball carrying ability to assume a bigger role if that situation dictates. Enter Evan Hull. Hull is dynamic in the passing game. He runs excellent routes. He seeks out space to give his quarterback a window to get him the ball. He's got very smooth hands and is exceptionally quick, as Matt mentioned, to transition back to a runner after the catch. When he's asked to block, Hull is more than happy to stick his nose into it and stop a blitzer. Hull's a very patient runner, and although he doesn't have great vision to me, he's very quick to react to a hole opening up. And once Hull is at the second level, his game elevates. At full speed, Hull can create his own yards, and he carries that pop. It's funny, he's compact. You mentioned he's 5'10", 210. But that size and that, the fact that he carries that weight well, man, it makes him a load to take down.
Evan Hull seems like one of these guys where just given the opportunity, will fool around and give you one of those weeks in fantasy where it's like, Evan Hull, 23 points. Where did this come from? And it's like the rest of his production for the year is like 5, 6, 3, 0, 0, 3. Like no hardly production, but it just exploded out of nowhere because things came together really well for him. And I still think that's a testament to be able to see for a guy of his stature. Zach, let's talk through a little bit of the things in regards to drawbacks for Evan Hull.
I just had a flashback to those like 3 Rex Burkhead weeks when he first came on with the page. Like that's what I just got. When Evan Hull gets the ball behind the line of scrimmage, things are a little bit slow to develop. I don't think he runs telepathically. What I mean is he doesn't see ahead. He doesn't understand quite what's going to happen before it does. Hull needs to see the hole open up in front of him rather than innately knowing his next move. He does a good job, though, getting what's blocked, but really doesn't start to get creative until he's past that initial wave of defenders. This lack of vision drastically cuts down on his effectiveness as an inside runner and probably limits, at least initially, his ability to take over a backfield. Evan Hull is the paradigm of a pass catcher plus position. He should make an immediate impact as a receiver. He has the potential to grow into a larger role and even assume most of a workload if something were to happen to a running back in front of him or in a committee with him. And perhaps the most enticing piece of all, the price should be right to acquire Evan Hull.
That is easily one of the most intriguing pieces for his prospects, because he's shrouded in, I won't say mystery, but just a whole bunch of petals. If you were looking at a flower, there's just so many petals that we're pulling off to look at and admire before we get to pieces like Evan Hull. But one thing I do want to point out to add on to what you were talking through, Zach, just his lack of wiggle after the momentum piece. And I think that combined with his, I think, inability in terms of instincts or anticipatory moves, because I'm not seeing the consistency of chaining moves together or chaining those things to maximize that yardage. And I think that his lack of wiggle after that momentum, you just see him plowing into people consistently at the in the second level or at the end of plays. And so while physical, I wish there were more instincts, more creativity from him to be able to see that and dream a little bit, but still a fine player. Foreman, final words here in reference to Evan Hull.
Yeah, you guys, I think you guys nailed a lot of the finer points of Hull's shortcomings, whether it be his below average vision. Like I mentioned, it's just sometimes he's just slamming into the backs of people. And I'm just like there was one play, like it was like open field and he just still ran into the guy's back. I'm like, what are you doing here, Evan? And I wrote down, I question his overall athleticism, but I don't look at people's combine numbers, but his combine numbers, you guys, it was good. And that doesn't show up on film. That's the weird thing when you have these guys at the combine. When the combine numbers don't really match up with what's going on in film, I question that a little bit because this is different when we're playing a pad. So, yes, he, like I mentioned, he can make the first man miss, but he doesn't do it enough. So, again, I don't know if that's just, like you mentioned, Zach, about him being able to chain moves together. And it's just like I got to squint a little bit more with Hull than I really want to. I was talking with Riley about Hull here, and he kind of comped him to Jake Funk. If you guys remember Jake Funk, so that was kind of his.
This feels like a Ram-centric podcast at this point.
I don't even think Jake Funk even plays with. I don't even think Jake Funk even plays for the Rams anymore. I don't even know if he's even in the NFL anymore. But he was fun for a hot minute back in the streets a couple years ago.
Jake Funk. That's a fun callback. All right, Evan Hull in the books. 2 down, 4 to go. Now let's get into, I think, one of, again, a surprising watch here. Productive player. We're staying in the state of Illinois, in the Big Ten. As a matter of fact, this man led the Big Ten in rush attempts in 2022. He was number 2 in the Big Ten in rushing yards. Number 1 in yards from scrimmage, number 1 in plays from scrimmage. We're looking at Chase Brown, 5'9", 209 pounds, and shocking, just recently turned 23 years old. He was born in the year 2000, March of 2000, which is just funny to be able to see these guys' birthdays and say, 2000, what? Anyway, it's just hilarious to see. But Chase Brown, one of the older running backs in the class. But again, for the Illini, he was someone who was putting in work. Originally started his collegiate career at Western Michigan in the MAC. Had a pretty good start to his career there where he played in 13 games, 352 yards at Western Michigan. Transfers to Illinois. The first season's not getting a ton of burn, but his attempts increased 2020, 2021, and 2022, culminating in this 2022 season where he carried the ball 328 times for 1,643 yards, 10 touchdowns. He sneaks in a Zach Reed rule-approved season with 27 catches, 240 yards, and 3 scores through the air. Chase Brown, uber productive for an Illini team that was surprisingly pretty good in 2022. And again, with a pretty good combine performance, people have a nice little buzz about Chase Brown. Zach, are you keeping the buzz going?
I bet Chase Brown absolutely crushed kindergarten. His ability to color by numbers and never veer outside the strictly defined lines is prime refrigerator material. Unfortunately, the NFL will probably demand a little bit more creativity. When running off tackle, Brown has the talent to roll up yards as long as the hole that he expected to be there is opened up. He will accelerate through the line of scrimmage, building up speed and using his ability to continue running through contact to add extra yards. Brown almost always finishes runs falling forward, churning his legs to get every inch that he can. And in the passing game, he's more than adequate as a receiver, but Brown doesn't have the secondary skills to be a true pass-catching weapon.
Understood. Foreman, keep the conversation going here. What things did you like about Chase Brown?
Yeah, I thought Brown, natural hands, good burst. He gets downhill quickly. He's got decent top end speed. He gets there pretty quickly. I felt he had a good feel for running lanes. He can either let the hole develop there or he can hit them depending on a little bit of change of pace there. He can play with, he plays to create contact, not avoid it. And it could be a positive, could be a negative there. But I think that I think Brown is someone that the community itself is going to be a bit higher on than myself.
Yeah, and Foreman, when you talk through that, really clean hands. I found from Chase Brown, which I enjoyed to be able to watch from him. Not necessarily an offensive weapon that you're going to be leveraging in terms of, hey, go run every single route. No, that I don't necessarily think that's something that you're going to see from him. And the short area quickness and juice, really enjoyed being able to see him really put his athleticism on display. And I know you talked about Foreman. When you look at Evan Hull's combine performance and then try to match it with the film, it's like, this is incongruent. This doesn't make sense. I think you see Chase Brown's athleticism pretty well when it comes to his ability on film. There are so many things that I really wanted to like when I watched Chase Brown. And there are so many things, unfortunately, I came away with not exactly loving about his game. Foreman, will stick with you. Talk to us a little bit about Chase Brown and the shortcomings you saw on film.
Yeah, I think a lot of them are similar to Hull. I think, again, he kind of gets what's blocked. He's another one of those same players. So I questioned Brown's change of pace, change of direction skills, and his overall agility. He lacks the extra gear to get to the edge. He loses momentum a lot when changing direction as well too, and he loses juice when he's running east and west as well too. His pass blocking needs refinement. He does a lot of the same things that Deuce Vaughn does at a bigger size, where he's just diving at ankles or just throwing a shoulder. And I question his ability to create his own yardage in a more physical and athletic NFL. So I just don't know how much of his own yards he can create against what was a very good offensive line and a very well coached offensive line under Burt Bielema down over there in Illinois. So good offensive line, and I just don't know how well his inability to create for himself is going to translate for Chase Brown at the next level.
I feel that, Zach. Let's keep it going. What do you have there on Chase Brown?
Yeah, while staying in the lines is an admirable quality when finishing off the pages in your Big Ten mascots coloring book, Chase Brown's inability to create off script really hampered his production when things didn't go as planned. If a defender can get through the offensive line, Brown doesn't have the suddenness or processing to escape, and he often slows down to make his next decision when the initial hold doesn't open up. And I think, Matt, that's part of what you were talking about, where, when he's going east to west and all of a sudden he has to slow down to make a decision, and that's not a great look. And I think as a blocker, Brown will turn his body and lead with his shoulder instead of squaring up a defender. There's definitely enough to Chase Brown's game to warrant some interest in later rounds of your rookie drafts. He is, after all, a running back who has the ability to catch the ball and tote the rock, but his lack of creativity and dearth of elite traits will probably mean it's going to take a lot of squinting and perhaps some injuries for him to really be fantasy relevant.
And one of the really interesting pieces of that is I think that there were flashes of him showing really keen and unique instinctive moves when it came to player, like when he was dealing with defenders, specifically near the line of scrimmage. But even at the line of scrimmage, and Foreman, Zach, you both hit on this. It's not really a good thing if winning pass pro, the times that you look the best is when you're looking to cut block someone. That shouldn't be the shouldn't be the thing that we take away from your pass pro, is that, oh, you could be successful cutting folks, but anytime other than that, it is a struggle. And I don't know if you guys caught this, and this almost feels like piling on, but I just kept writing these things down because I saw it in every game over and over. The sheer number of times that the first tackler was winning against him, whether that be at the line of scrimmage or even in space, was so incredibly disappointing. And I think there was one thing specifically that led to it more than any others. The man doesn't leverage a stiff arm. It's almost as if his arm isn't like legitimately he's running the ball with one arm and the other one doesn't keep people at bay ever. And I consistently see people at the second level and even at the line of scrimmage in on his legs over and over again. And I could not fathom or understand how and or why he would not leverage a stiff arm or any kind of a straight arm. And literally, I think I counted one in all the things that I watched on him. And I've got 8 games written down here where I watched him over 2 seasons. Defenders are constantly in on his legs, arm tackles at the line of scrimmage. He's losing one-on-ones. He's bullied in pass pro. He lacks a stiff arm. And it's crazy because I feel like for all of the production that he had, he should have had a 2,000-yard season if he would leverage traits that many even of the guys around him have. Man, I was really disappointed. I was really disappointed because there were flashes of goodness, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to bemoan this so long, but I just remember writing and when it came to Chase Brown, I was like, why? I want more. Well,
yeah, you look at the box scores and you're just like, all right, this guy's busting off some yardage here, but I think that's a product of his system rather than a product of the overall talent of the player, unfortunately.
I just want to see a race between Chase Brown and Puka Nacua just running with their arms down.
I got my money on Puka. Here we go. Moving on. This time we're heading over to the land of Boomer Sooner. We are talking all things Eric Gray. Tennessee transfer to Oklahoma, 5'9", 207. And again, another 23-year-old. Shocking. And this time he was actually born in November of 99. So we talked about Chase Brown, obviously just turning 23. Eric Gray also being on a little bit older side, which was a little shocking, but still very, very positive player. When we're looking at his production, specifically after he got to Oklahoma this final season, 213 attempts, 1,366 yards, 11 touchdowns, and in 3 of his 4 seasons, 1 at Tennessee and 2 at Oklahoma, it gives us 30, 23, and 33 receptions. Eric Gray, talented player, highly coveted when it came to the Devy ranks once upon a time in terms of how high up of a recruit that he was. Left Tennessee to be able to find stardom at Oklahoma, even though this past season under Brent Venables, they were not a very good team. I don't know that says all that it needs to about Eric Gray's prospects at the next level. Foreman, it's yours to discuss.
I know that you're happy that we don't have to talk about another player in that god-awful orange, so I'm sure you're happy with this
Amen,
transfer.
brother. Amen.
So Eric Gray, a guy you turned on, and I made a GIF. I don't make a lot of GIFs, but I made a GIF of one of these plays, and I tried to send it to you guys. And it was just the defenders just falling over, and I'm just sitting there going, wow. And my wife's sitting next to me, and she's like, what are you watching? And I'm like, look at this. And she's like looking at me like, what am I looking at here? And I'm just like, you didn't see that? You didn't see that jump cut there? And she's like, what? I'm just like, all right, never mind. So yeah, it's like wives just don't understand. Like I feel like I'm Will Smith here. So on to the positives about Eric Gray. I got a lot of them here. He's got good burst. He's a natural pass catcher. He's patient to let holes open up and let the defender make the first move. He's got a great spin move. He's got nimble feet. He runs with good balance. He's very intentional with his movements. I don't know what that means, but I wrote it down and I feel like it sticks here. I feel like he's intentional, and I appreciate that about him. Jump cut leaves defenders grasping for air, can run through arm tackles, and he does a nice job of waiting till almost the absolute last moment to make his move. And I love watching those guys where they can make those defenders miss in the proverbial phone booth. So I think that Chase Brown needs to watch some of Eric Gray's game and get some pointers there.
I think all of the instincts and all of the bursts that we really wanted for the first three guys that we talked about, we know why they don't have it, because it all ended up in Eric Gray. I think that's really how that worked out. Zach, let's keep it going about things you may like about Eric Gray here.
You know that first really cold day that hits at the end of fall and you go pull your heavy jacket out of the closet where it's been since last April and you slip it on, you're dreading going outside because you know it's going to be miserable for the next 5 months. You jam your hands in your pockets, and there among the lint and those little pebbles that have gathered is a $20 bill that you didn't even know you had. That is Eric Gray tape. Sure, Gray is older. He'll be 24 on November 4th. And yeah, he transferred from Tennessee to Oklahoma, but he put up some impressive performances everywhere he went. Gray is one of the most decisive backs in the 2023 class. He makes quick decisions. He attacks both inside and off tackle with great burst. And when a hole shifts in front of him, Gray will use this very efficient plant cut to adapt and find the next open hole. He's an above average receiver and a decent route runner. And I think Gray's ability to catch the ball and make plays in space will benefit his team at the next level.
And that ability that he's able to leverage with what they call it with the dead leg there, I remember watching it and just thinking, and I know we don't necessarily always love the comps here. I just remember watching it and thinking, oh, this really reminds me of DeAndre Swift at Georgia in terms of how he's able to leverage that cutting ability specifically in open space. And I think, again, when we talk about the things that Eric Gray has or exhibits that other players that we've talked about to this point, and maybe we'll be talking about here soon, don't exhibit, his move set. Like he's one that is chaining together just a lot of heat. And it's really cool to be able to see that instinct and that creativity for him, contact balance and that power. And he's consistently finding daylight in the midst of a lot of times for Oklahoma, just some really porous run blocking, and specifically in this past season. But what he's able to set up at the second level, I think, is what makes him a home run, maybe not home run hitter, but consistently legging out some doubles that we like a lot. And I like to be able to see that from Eric Gray. Let's stay with you, Zach. Let's talk about the things regarding Eric Gray, and not to mention a pro day that just went very, very wrong. And for those that may not know, and I hope I'm not stepping on your toes, Zach, pro day, he runs a 4.63. He's got a 9.10 broad jump, 37.5-inch vertical, which you like that explosion, but he's got a 7.25 3-cone drill, 4.18 20-yard shuttle. I think I see the reason why those doubles weren't legged out into home runs in so much of his film. But Zach, I want you to get into it.
Yeah, size and speed are going to be the biggest hurdles that Eric Gray faces at the next level. Although he's very quick through the initial hole and accelerates well beyond it, his long speed always seems to be just slightly lacking. On multiple plays, it seemed that Gray was just a fingertip away from breaking long touchdown runs instead of just chunk yardage. He also struggles to escape defenders that he meets head on at the second level, which was odd because he's so good at avoiding them getting to the initial hole. And I think when he has room to operate, Gray absolutely shines. But in short yardage situations, he doesn't quite have the strength to push that pile to gain the hard yards that he needs to. $20 doesn't get you as much as it used to, but found money is a windfall regardless. Eric Gray is a dynamic pass catcher plus who has shown the ability to carry the ball between the tackles as well as on the outside. I think there's a good chance that Gray will be overlooked in the first couple of rounds of your rookie drafts, and you will be able to take him to the bank. I really like what I saw with Eric Gray.
Very well. Foreman, let's talk through any drawbacks you may have seen with Eric Gray.
So as you were talking about the pro day, JMic, I went and searched Eric Gray pro day, and shout out to the OU Daily with their tagline, yes. The Memphis native ran a 4.62 second 40 times, solidifying himself as a projected day 2 selection of the 2023 NFL draft. OU Daily, I don't think you know how fast people run in the NFL because 4.62 ain't that fast, my guys and gals. But yeah, that was the biggest drawback I had with Gray was the same things you guys mentioned, was he just doesn't have that extra year to be a home run hitter. And if he was a tenth of a second faster, this is a guy that we'd be talking about in the Jahmyr Gibbs tier. I wholeheartedly believe that there you don't have to squint that hard to see Jahmyr Gibbs here. He may not be quite the pass catcher, quite as dynamic with the agility, but man, he does a lot of great things. And someone I'm probably going to be targeting near the end of the second round and definitely the early part of the third rounds of people that are just going to overlook him, and I'm going to let them overlook him. Again, I said it pre-show. He's to me this year. He's my Keontae Ingram, a guy that no one's talking about. That I'm going to be all over in the later parts of drafts, and I don't really need to target him there probably because probably going to go much later than that. So, but yeah, Gray was something that I truly enjoyed. And by the way, I saw your comment. It's not peanut butter. I don't care what the founder said. It's not peanut butter.
Okay, mate.
We got beef over here at the Dynasty Dummies. I will just throw this out. I do think that it's important for us to remember what the NFL has told us over the last few seasons specifically regarding athleticism, specifically at the running back position. Over and over, we've watched running backs with subpar athleticism fall in the NFL draft. I think CEH really being the last exception to that rule. And again, I was as big a fan of CEH as I felt like I can remember. But from an athletic perspective, he did not, and many of these guys do not tend to get the capital that you want them to. And when we think about what Eric Gray put down at his pro day, and you already know about what people say about pro day numbers, how they're juiced and all these other things, it could get dark. For as good as his tape was, by the time we get to the actual NFL draft, it could get real dark if we're looking at round 5 and he hasn't gone and round 6 comes. I would like to hope that's not the case. And I haven't really looked at the mock drafts or at least where Eric Gray's been going. But I do think it's fair to at least mention, as much as we enjoy the athleticism from a numbers perspective tends to matter to the NFL teams much more over these last couple years specifically than I think it maybe had before.
Yeah, and that's a brilliant point, and it also goes to how we evaluate and why we evaluate now, because we are looking for the traits that we value for fantasy football and then reserve the right to reshuffle ranks once the NFL tells us that last piece of the puzzle in the last weekend in April, where they say, okay, this is the draft capital. These are the rounds that these players were drafted in. This is how interested we are, because it's the one time the NFL can't lie to us. I mean, and that's really where we're at. And so, yes, absolutely. Like I think consensus really enjoyed Eric Gray on film.
Yep.
If he gets draft capital, wheels up. If not, he's a player that you can shoot your shot in the 4th or 5th round of your rookie draft with some big upside potential, but know that it's an uphill climb to get there because the NFL invests draft capital and they give those players every chance to fail before they get to players that are drafted later.
Spot on. On to the next one. Only 2 players left, and this time we're going with Sweet Lew. Don't call me Lew, but call me Lew. Lew Nichols out of Central Michigan. We've got various measurements on him, one of which is showing 5'10", 220 pounds. If he's 220, I don't know. I don't know about on film that I think he's 220, but that's neither here nor there. Central Michigan, very productive player, specifically in that 2021 season where, again, we talk about these guys like him and Deuce Vaughn just getting absurd number of touches, and Chase Brown, actually. 341 carries, 1,848 yards, and 16 touchdowns. 2021 MAC Offensive Player of the Year. Yes, not only did he lead the MAC in rushing in terms of attempts, he also led the NCAA in attempts and yards. Yes, he was also number 1 in the MAC in rushing touchdowns. Yes, he was number 1 in plays from scrimmage in the nation. Yes, he was number 1 in yards from scrimmage in the nation. Sweet Lew is a productive, bad mother, shut your mouth. Zach, we'll start with you. Let's talk a little bit of Sweet Lew Nichols.
Yeah, when looking at Lew Nichols' statistics from his distinguished career at Central Michigan, it's impossible not to be impressed by his junior season. JMic, you mentioned it, 341 carries, almost 1,900 yards, 16 touchdowns, and throw in 40 receptions for another 338 and 2 scores. Big numbers like that from a small school back merit a closer look. Nichols is a downhill runner, and when he gets his 220 pounds up to top speed, he is an absolute load to take down. He'll blow up defenders who try to arm tackle him and carry linebackers who attempt to hit him high. Although Nichols isn't consistently quick to the line of scrimmage, he does have very good acceleration. And when I talk about acceleration versus burst, and I think there's a difference for me, burst is that to the line of scrimmage really quickly, like from the initial handoff to the line of scrimmage. Acceleration is how fast you get up to top speed. Some guys do them at the same time. Nichols is not one of those guys. He doesn't have great burst, but he's got pretty good acceleration after the hole. And for a bigger back, Nichols is a good pass catcher, and he does an excellent job getting out in the flat to give his quarterback a safety valve, which a lot of these players that I've watched this year don't do that. They don't have that kind of innate ability or that understanding of what needs to happen and when it needs to happen to give the quarterback an avenue to, escape a broken play or a coverage, that would be a coverage sack. So
check and release. Foreman, let's keep talking Lew Nichols here.
I don't got much to say about Lew. It was hard finding tape on Lew that without watching, sitting. I don't have the Zach Reed time to sit and watch a whole game here. But the stuff I was watching the highlights, and some of those, first of all, whoever's making them highlights needs to reassess what a highlight is on some of these. But I digress. Nichols is a functional pass catcher, like Zach mentioned there, and he's got a pretty good top end speed. For someone who's running through at times tractor trailer size lanes to run through at Central Michigan. I could walk through some of those lanes he was getting to run through. So
you got to get your Chippewa pennant out, maybe like a brisket sandwich, and just sit down and enjoy the full games, Matt.
You've been really you've been hungry for brisket. You've been talking about brisket a lot today.
Oh man, let's go.
You talk about those rushing lanes, Foreman, and it's funny because essentially with those rushing lanes, he effectively becomes a tractor trailer for folks trying to bring him down. It reminded me so much. I forget which X-Men movie it is. I don't remember if it's Days of Future Past or the other one, but where the Juggernaut is running through the walls, like just a series, and you've probably seen the GIF of it where he's just crashing through wall after wall after wall. But that's kind of what he reminds me of after he gets that lane to run through. Foreman, will stick with you when we talk about. I know you didn't have a ton to be able to leverage, but let's talk about a few of the things that you may have seen that you did not like.
Unfortunately, the things I have to say about Nichols, the negatives outweigh the positives. He's a below average pass blocker. He's one of these guys. He gets what's blocked. I want to see some creativity here. Like one of the plays I was referencing in the highlights I saw where he runs through literally a 10-foot wide lane and then literally runs into the defender at the second level. Like that's not a highlight. It's a highlight for the offensive line. Like, why are we showing this as a highlight for the running back? He's got a hard time creating his own yardage, and too many times he's tackled by the first defender in one-on-one situations. Man, it's just again, another one of these guys where you see the numbers like, okay, this guy deserves a watch. You watch it, and you're just like, the numbers don't match what I'm seeing here.
I do feel like it's one of the stranger things for him to be as productive as he was in that junior campaign. And to not create as much for yourself as I think you'd expect for somebody who ran for 1,800 yards. And I think, Foreman, you bring up a very valid point. Where and how did you accumulate all this? Was the offensive line that amazing? I don't know. And forgive me, y'all. I did not mention the fact that in his last season in 2022, 177 carries, 601 yards, and only 6 touchdowns. We didn't quite see the production. I presume that there was an injury in there. Unfortunately, I didn't do the digging to be able to figure out what the heck happened. But Zach, tell us a little bit about the drawbacks that you found in Sweet Lew here.
So I've got an answer for you, JMic. And the problem with taking a closer look is that occasionally you find things. And as spectacular as Nichols' junior season was, his 2022 campaign fell flat. And as it turns out, losing 2 NFL caliber offensive linemen is really detrimental to a running game. And that loss highlighted Nichols' failure to create for himself when asked to get outside on sweeps or when plays got pushed beyond the tackles. He just does not have the speed to get to the edge. Nichols also has a really bad habit of slowing down to cut, even when he's already up to speed in the open field. And I think, Matt, that's what you're talking about when he loses one-on-one battles, even at the second level, is he slows way down to cut. Although Lew Nichols has the prototypical size that NFL teams are looking for, his Central Michigan roots will most likely be reflected in his draft capital. What you should be looking for is the depth of whatever running back room that Nichols lands in. Because if he's given the opportunity to see a stretch of volume with a competent offensive line in the NFL, Nichols could be a lot of fun.
And again, when you're in the latter rounds of your draft, you could shoot worse shots when it comes to the picks and players there. Last player on the night, we've got good old Mo Ibrahim, or as they kept saying in his freshman year tape, Mohamed Ibrahim, which was just wearing me all the way out. So 5'8", 203 out of Minnesota. Wherever you are, Kane Fassell, I hope you are enjoying whatever we're about to say, hopefully, about Mo Ibrahim here. When we look at what he was able to accomplish in this time with Minnesota, we see that he comes out in his freshman season, 202 carries as a freshman. Yeah, we'll take that. 2018, 1,160 yards. 2019, not quite the campaign that we would have hoped for. Only 114 carries, 604 yards. So production was essentially cut nearly in half. In 2020, we see that he has the 201 carries again. So the carries are still way back up. 1,076 yards and 15 touchdowns. And I think after the 2020 season is when folks started to really get excited. PJ Fleck, head coach at Minnesota, had everybody row the boat. row the boat, right? So, and he had everyone excited. And then the 2021 season came. He comes out in the opener against Ohio State, and he's getting worked like crazy. And unfortunately, and if you look up the videos, you can find it. I don't encourage you to do so, but he blows his Achilles. You see it really well. They zoom in on it. It's not fun. I would not encourage you to watch it. That was, again, the first game in that 2021 season. He still went for 30 carries, 163 yards, and 2 touchdowns against Ohio State. So not a bad day at the office if you're going to do that. He comes back in this 2022 season. And listen, are you healthy? Yes, I am. 320 carries, 1,665 yards, and 20. I'll say that again, 20 rushing touchdowns. No, he did not accomplish the Zach Reed rule in any season. And actually, for his career in those 4 seasons plus 1 game, he gave us 22 total catches. So not a threat in the pass game in terms of his time with the Chippewas. But here we are. Or excuse me, the Golden Gophers. My apologies. I'm still stuck with Central Michigan there. My bad. Everybody breathe in Golden Gopher country. Not the pass catcher that you hope for, but again, a player who bounced back from a really brutal injury to be super productive this season. Foreman, I'll give you dibs here when it comes to Mo Ibrahim. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, Ibrahim is a guy who I mentioned earlier, a good friend of the show, Riley, said, make sure you check this guy out. Ibrahim's got good vision to find cutback lanes. He gets to speed quickly. He can get skinny through the hole. He can pop those pads in the second level, laying a lick on some linebackers. He falls forward. You're not tackling this guy with arm tackles. He's patient, and he's a compact runner. Those things I liked. Again, I remember watching him at that Ohio State game. I remember where I was at. I was in the pool at my in-laws' house. I know. Shout out to the pool. We were living with them at the time. But yeah, I was like, oh, that doesn't look good at all. And then you just like, yeah, it's just that did not look good. But yeah, I think I saw earlier when I remember watching the film. He had like the most consecutive 100 yards games like the last like 25 years or something like that. So, and again, maybe he's proving this Achilles injury wrong, but I do think that there was some things I saw with the Achilles from 2020 to 2022. So, and
with an additional year, I think you hope that he can continue to, hopefully in his rookie campaign, to even be more healthy, hopefully, and show you more as a runner there. Zach, over to you for Mo Ibrahim's goodness.
By the power of Grayskull, I have the power. Now, Ibrahim is not He-Man. Despite posting over 1,000 rushing yards in 3 different seasons, never rushing for fewer than 5.2 yards per carry in a year, and fully recovering from an Achilles rupture to the tune of 320 carries, 1,665 yards, and 20 touchdowns. In fact, when he encounters an oncoming defender, he more closely resembles Ram Man. Ibrahim packs a wallop for a smaller back, but he uses his compact frame to deliver punishment. He seems spring-loaded, coiling, and then delivering that punishment to his tacklers. Although Ibrahim does deal out hits, he's not necessarily actively seeking that contact. He basically uses that as he knows he's going to be tackled, and he's like, guess what? I get something for you too. He was rarely hit by the initial defender, utilizing his excellent vision and ability to jump cut. Ibrahim is decisive, quickly assessing his blocking lanes and hitting the hole hard. Ibrahim is also especially effective at getting defenders to chase him laterally along the line before he shifts upfield. And in goal line situations, Ibrahim has a second gear where he shoots through defenses untouched to find the paint. And it's really funny because you know he's going to get the ball. The defense knows he's going to get the ball, and he still manages to find the hole and get through it before anybody can do anything about it.
That leverage and body lean that he's able to that he's able to run with. Just very low center of gravity, very grounded, I guess, just for lack of a better word. It just reminds me of like a football's version of Zach Randolph. Just a game that is very grounded consistently, but is able to give you the goods. And Zach, you highlighted this, but his ability, and it's a catch-22, because I think we'll get to the other part of this when we talk about the not so great things, but his ability to diagnose penetration quickly when it comes to his vision is really cool to see, because what he consistently does is he's able to hug tight to blockers to be able to maximize what he doesn't have in that lateral agility. He does make up for it when it comes to his vision and his ability to hug tight to the hole, hug tight to the edge of that blocker, and consistently fall forward and be able to find positive yardage. And I think that that's something that, again, when we talk about someone who's going to have limited opportunities, I trust Mo Ibrahim to be able to maximize any and every touch that he's able to get at the next level. And while he may not have the home runs ever, he will most certainly be able to consistently give you these singles that just go over and over and just wrecking folks. And obviously, if he's ever in an offense where they're consistently running the ball or leverage any kind of option similar to like the Falcons or similar to the Titans traditionally with Derrick Henry, you could see him just really putting a hurting on a defense. If there's any sort of leeway that he's going to be given in terms of number of carries. Zach, I'm coming right back to you in reference to Mo Ibrahim. Let's talk through, again, final player of the night, not a perfect prospect, the final running back that we'll be talking about for the Hootenanny. Let's get into it.
The most glaring void in Ibrahim's game is pass catching. And I don't think there's any question about that. Although it's impossible to truly assess his receiving abilities since he only caught 22 balls over 5 years at Minnesota, this shortcoming, coupled with Ibrahim's lack of long speed, I think really limits his big play potential and some of the avenues to fantasy boom weeks. And as quick as Ibrahim is to the line of scrimmage, he doesn't have that lateral quickness, and he's just not going to run away from defenders either. He doesn't have that long speed. And I think Ibrahim is also prone to shoestring tackles. He really needs to have a clean running lane in terms of like the ground level in order to be successful. He gets taken down around the feet really often. While I think there's a lot to like about Mohamed Ibrahim's tape, there are also a lot of red flags on his profile. His Achilles injury, while seemingly in the past, will linger on the minds of both NFL and fantasy evaluators. His lack of pass catching chops and that truly top gear, I think, ultimately cap his upside. Ibrahim's ceiling is probably as a sidekick. He's a between the tackles back in a committee with a dynamic pass catcher.
Yeah, and this and I think that's it. It's so funny if we take these guys and we take some of their best traits of these six, we could really be cooking with something special. It'd be a lot of fun, but alas, when you're 18 deep in a class, obviously, even those folks are going to have holes. And again, specifically the lateral agility, and especially when he's up to speed, he has the Leonard Fournette thing where it just kind of takes forever to turn sometimes. It's like the arm is going and the steps are super choppy, and it's like I'm like turning a Cadillac or something. I don't know, but again, I like what he offers to an NFL offense, and I'm curious how much for fantasy it can matter, especially with the limited pass catching chops and seeing where he's going to end up going in the draft. Foreman, the final words on Ibrahim go to you, my friend.
Yeah. So again, the pass catching, I have that mentioned as well too. Again, something else I mentioned with another player, a guy he just runs to contact. Like, I think the running to contact is because he just lacks that overall athleticism to make people miss. And I'm seeing the same things that y'all are seeing. I have written it down. He's going to be the lesser part of a committee. I have Jacksonville ? I would think he'd be really fun there to pair him with ETN. You're basically replacing a guy. You're basically replacing a guy coming off an Achilles injury with a guy coming off an Achilles injury. So I could see a lot of the James Robinson, the James Robinson comps there to a certain extent there with Ibrahim. But I think I like him a little bit more than the negatives I have on him because a lot of things he does is fun. But someone who's probably going to lack the overall athleticism to be a consistent fantasy producer.
And really, at this point, I just would prefer that you all would just show me a little bit of love. I did not use B side of a committee all Hootenanny long. And right when you all brought it up here at the end in terms of being the second guy in the committee, I was just thinking about the fact I wore that term out last year to know Hootenanny, and I tried really hard this year not to use it, and I made it through 18 running backs. Didn't say it once, except for when I called myself out for not saying it. Sorry, nonsense. Here we are, the end of 18 running backs, the end of the catch-all episode, part 2. And now we get to take these 18 players, we get to put everything out there and rank them all, shake it up, and see where everything lands. Zach, we get to start with you in reference to how these 6 rank amongst each other and where you may have these guys slotted amongst the class itself.
I was not expecting to have a top 6 player in my overall running back rankings come out of the running back catch-all show. But here we are. Eric Gray comes in as my running back 6 overall, the first back of these guys that we talked about tonight. Evan Hall is my second spot. Lew Nichols and Ibrahim are neck and neck. I think I have Ibrahim just slightly ahead. So Gray, Hall, Ibrahim, Nichols, Chase Brown, Deuce Vaughn. Sorry, Peter Howard. I see you in the chat. I see you there watching. I want Deuce Vaughn to succeed. I want to be in on Deuce Vaughn. I want to see him come in and do all the things that everybody is hoping that he will. But he's really got to have an extreme pass catching role, which there aren't very many of in the NFL anymore. Like you get like the split backfield, but you don't have as many of the Nyheim Hines or the Danny Woodhead or that type of role anymore. Even James White did it a couple of years ago for the Patriots. It's just going to be really hard for me to see that. So again, I think that we're looking at a lot of late second, early third, late third, fourth round picks that could be really productive for fantasy, but they're not people that you're going to get really, really excited about in the earlier rounds of your rookie drafts this year. And Eric Gray is going to be a steal.
Very well, Foreman. Over to you. How do you guys how do you have these guys shaken out?
So I'm just gonna do them how I have these players shaken out because I'm still working on finishing my RB ranks up. I will have those out when I get back from vacation. You can mark my words. I know someone even asked me on Twitter, so shout out to them who care about my ranks. You are one of 2 people who care about that, myself and that person. So shout out to you. I wish I had their name off the top of my head, but shout out to you. Obviously, I have Gray at the top of my list as well too. I have Ibrahim at 2 on this list. Shout out to Peter. I've got Deuce at 3. It doesn't take me that squint to find it. I think that the NFL wants these players to get into space, just like similar to your Tyreek Hills, your things of that nature. Who they're going to use these players. They're going to maybe not mold their offenses, but they're going to use them to their strengths. And I think that a team can see this and they're like, okay, look, we can use him in this pass catching role. He's going to be used in a pass catching role, not in a pass blocking role, obviously. But I think there's a team that's going to find that. I have Hull at 4, Brown at 5, and then I have Nichols at the bottom. He's given me Darrell Henderson vibes, where he'd have these massive lanes to run through. Shout out his career yards per attempt being the highest of any college player, and we see where that gets him. So it's just but Nichols just doesn't do it for me. He's just not someone I'm super interested in. And same thing with Brown and the fact that he just can't create for himself. So I'd rather have a player who I know can create for himself and do one thing really well than someone who's just going to kind of run in a straight line and get what's blocked.
Yeah, I feel that. And similar to Zach, was not expecting to be as high on Eric Gray, and he ended up in my 6th spot. And again, and I should probably preface this, I tend to do this just in case we have any new listeners, just so we're clear. What we're sharing with you are our film grades. So this is us diving in. We're watching tape from as early as we can find it on them in terms of their collegiate careers, all the way up through their final seasons. And so these are our film grades. And as Zach talked about earlier when we were discussing the various players, these obviously things are subject to change when we talk about what we're going to be getting from the NFL in terms of rookie draft capital and things of that nature. But regardless, I've got Eric Gray's film grade. He settled right there between Zach Charbonnet, who I have as my RB5 on film grades, and Kendre Miller, who's my RB7. He settled right nicely in between them. From there, we're going pretty far down the list. And oddly enough, these guys don't play the same, but I've got Evan Hull, Deuce Vaughn, and Mo Ibrahim all with the same exact grade. Obviously, they didn't get there the same way. So those are 3 different guys, 3 different ways they got to the film grade. I've got Chase Brown literally a slight tick behind them. And I will say this, and I kind of feel like I drug Chase Brown a little bit earlier, and I don't mean to be. Hope that doesn't come off as rude or disrespectful. Again, this is just me sharing what I saw. The flashes that I saw from Chase Brown, I liked a lot, and I want good things for Chase Brown. I just don't know if, and I don't believe that he is the flashes that I saw. Unfortunately, I think he's more consistently me wanting more of what I wished it was. But I really like his flashes, and he's literally a point below those 3 guys that I just talked through. And then lastly, bringing up the rear there out of the 18 that we have is Lew Nichols. But so essentially 5 of these guys basically bring up the rear of the ranks there. But again, when we talk through them and when we look at the class as a whole, I'm looking at my 3rd round picks. I'm looking at my 4th round picks, and I don't hate them right now. I'm okay with what we're able to cook up. I don't have to take the dart throw on some nonsense that I really don't even really want to make the pick in. This is actually a group that you can squint and see positive things for these guys, and we'll see how it shakes out for them at the NFL level. So 18 players when it comes to the running backs, done. We're finished talking running backs. Next week, matter of fact, Foreman, just you've put in the work, you've done great work here over the last several weeks. Giving you next week off. Why don't you go to the beach, go spend some time with your family, all expenses paid, not by me, but somebody very close to you. All expenses paid. Go take care of that. Zach and I will handle next week's Catch These Hands episode when it comes to one more round of wide receivers. We've got some names that many have been waiting to hear from. You wanted to hear about some Tank Dell. We've got some Tank Dell on deck. You wanted to hear about Charlie Jones out of Purdue. We've got some Charlie Jones for you. And even some, I don't even know how to say it, Xavier. I don't know. I'm gonna let Zach take the lead on that one. How's that?
Xavier? I don't know. I'm going to have to find a pronunciation key.
We're going to be talking about him too, though. We're going to be talking about him too. So I'm excited to hear about it. Foreman, they're not going to hear your voice next week. Any final thoughts when we're talking about these running backs or even the Hootenanny to this point?
This class is deeper, and I feel like the last couple of years we have these catch-all episodes, and we find one guy that we like a lot. So I think that going through these deeper dives is something that's important. I'm probably going to, after I finish those other three guys that I haven't watched, that I need to finish watching. I might even pick a couple other guys, just to go. I saw someone in the comments mention Deneric Price from Tulsa. Maybe that's someone to take a look at. Just go through some of these box scores and say, hey, look, is it worth me to watch maybe a game or two of these guys to see if I'm interested in them? And you can find a lot of watching a game or two of these guys, just to figure out where your head's at. But again, these third and fourth round picks, you're not going to find a lot there, but when you do, it's really nice to find a nice gem there.
No doubt about it. Zach, final words on the evening go to you, sir.
Man, I got so many thoughts going through my head. Matt, I love what you're saying about watching a couple of games of these later round players or players that we're not expecting a lot out of. It's the Malcolm Gladwell blink. You can learn a lot in a little bit of watching, and then you can decide whether or not you want to watch more to find out whether or not these players are something that you're interested in. Again, we talked about the law of diminishing returns a little bit at the beginning of last week's show. You got to realize that once you get down in a class where we're 40 or 50 players deep right now in this class, you're probably not going to find a lot of fantasy relevant players here. The cool thing about the 2023 class is a lot of the depth and a lot of the players who have potential are running backs. And it does not take as much for a running back to come in and have fantasy production as it does for a wide receiver or a tight end. It's just a really a much simpler path to production over a game or two. And if your fourth round pick has 2 running back 1 games, that is an absolute win. So again, keep that in mind. We're not necessarily analyzing these players or looking at these players, giving you our film grade on these players, expecting the next Saquon Barkley to come out of these players, or even the next Arian Foster. Like, that doesn't happen every year, but you ought to get some production, and that's what you ought to be looking for, what you ought to be mining.
I think the last thing that I want to say in reference to running backs before we pack it up, send Foreman off on vacation, I am just excited for the opportunity I'm hoping to take Tank Bigsby at the very early part of the second round in anywhere I can. So all my league mates, my cards are on the table. I'm excited about that. And also, I should mention this too. I feel like the Abanikanda bandwagon has really caught steam since that episode where we talked about him. And I continue to understand, and I mentioned it then. He's especially with his athleticism and especially what he did at his pro day where he showed off. We knew he could break home runs. We know he's fast. And again, those are the things when we talk about the limited opportunities that these guys can have. He's also going to have the size and the prototype that says, oh, he perhaps has bell cow capabilities. And even though I didn't love what he was doing on a down and out basis, his ability to get loose in the secondary is going to be something that has people excited about him. So I'm excited about the running backs. I'm really excited about those first few guys that we have up top. And I think that Jahmyr Gibbs is one of the biggest, best values that we're going to find that you're going to be able to get at 105, 106 in so many leagues. Like it's going to be absurd. But that's it. I'm done. I'm over you, Zach. Shores.
No, it's what I've been saying. This class, your first 8 first round picks are actually going to be worth first-round picks. And that doesn't happen every class. As much as we like to pretend it does, it doesn't. This is a deep class, and then it carries down into the later rounds with these running backs. This has been a ton of fun. We've gone deeper this year with the Hootenanny than we have in several years past, just because I think there is that much depth and there are that many players that are fun to watch and fun to talk about. Appreciate you gentlemen both chopping it up with me, giving me a chance to have some fun, to see your faces. Everybody in the chat, everybody who showed up to watch us live, we appreciate it. We don't do a very good job of promoting this show. None of the three of us are great self-promoters, and so we appreciate anybody who stumbles on and finds it. We appreciate you, Peter Howard, who is shouting us out on Twitter and trying to pull people in, grab them by the arms. And we appreciate you on the podcast side of things, rolling with us this far. JMic and I will be back next week for the Catch These Hands episode of the Dynasty Dummies Hootenanny Catch All. It'll be the last 6. I may push you to 7. I don't know. I may talk about Laporta. I want to talk about Trey Palmer. There are a couple of guys that weren't on the list that I think we should talk about, but we'll get there next week. This has been the Dynasty Dummies. We appreciate you listening. Peace. And then the button.